to fill in some dead air space before the White Sox game. And we're out of the Fox River Valley Media Network, streaming on WRMN1410.com. Studio number here is 847-931-1410 if you want to call in. Our text is 505-926-1410 if you want to text us. Or you can hit us up in the comments on the YouTube Live WRMN 1410 channel. You get the direct hookups from WRMN1410.com. Hey, Paul, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Let me get this shout out. You know, every Tuesday, the boys at the Dunkin' Donuts Veterans, which meets at the Bunker Hill Woods now at 9 o'clock on Tuesday mornings. All right. They, the Lake County Honor Flight, those are the World War II, Korean War, and Vietnam veterans that fly to Washington, D.C., so they could give the veterans a good view of all the history there, the monuments and everything, but especially the World War II Memorial, the Korean War Memorial, and the Vietnam Veteran Wall there, which are great to see in person on that. So they're having the inaugural John W. Davis Jr. Memorial Golf Outing. This is a fundraiser for them, and it's July 20th, Sunday, July 20th. Yeah, at Foss Park Golf Course. That's up by Great Lakes Naval Air Base, Naval Training Base. Yeah, NTB, Naval Training Base. It used to be Glenview Naval Air Base, but that's not there anymore. So it's $100 per player, all right, and you can go to their website, LakeCountyHonorFlight.org, for more information. There's also a link on our Legion webpage, post104.org. All right, post104.org, and the events. There's a link there that'll hook you up. You can buy tickets on Eventbrite. So it's $100 a head, which ain't too bad for a golf outing, but they're asking for sponsors there. Further information is available. All right, so got that out of the way. Now, remember, any veteran that wants to shout out to us with any veteran events, you're more than welcome. That's what the show was originally founded for, to be a veteran shout-out show. But to fill in time for nobody calling, I mean, we've had a few calls, but to fill in time for that, we're taking up subjects. And today's subject, I think, is the BBB, not the Better Business Bureau, but the Big Beautiful Bill, which I guess has been passed. So it's the BBA now, the Big Beautiful Act, right?
Right.
All right, so.
Big 4th of July signing over there at the White House.
Yeah. And I'm good. Yeah, and so, yeah, he had big 4th of July signing. But what concerns me the most about this is that it's not a budget. It's a continuing resolution. Is that right, Paul?
It's not a budget, but it does have tax ramifications for the average citizen. So for practical purposes, it's the law, and it continues on the original Trump tax program, and then it creates a new program where they're not going to tax tips to a certain amount, and they're not going to tax overtime to a certain amount, and then they're not going to tax Social Security generally, and it will apply to about 89% of the country who receive Social Security. So there are some huge ramifications to the public and the citizens out there.
Yeah, so I'm unfortunately I'll be applying for Social Security. I'm going to take it at 62 because why not? You know, if I guess that's like
with regard to that, I always tell people take Social Security as soon as you can get it. Now, a lot of people say wait till you get the bigger number, but you got to understand something. By waiting, you don't get any more life. Okay, so the money you get before you reach 65, if you could find, it would take you years. You'd have to live an extra 8, 10, 12 years longer to recoup that if you waited. So I always tell people, get it when you can and be happy with it.
And for everyone there, we are not really what do you call
Financial
financial advisors at all. So I'll give the same disclaimer here. This information on the show is for informational purposes and should not be construed as legal or fiduciary advice on any subject matter. The views put forward on this show are the opinions of the hosts, Michael Tooman, Paul Burvid, and their guest callers, and not necessarily those of WRMN 1410 AM. But yeah, I agree with you, Paul. The reason I'm taking it early is because if I don't need that money, I could deposit it into an interest earning or invest it better than the federal government can. And by the time I hit 65, I'll have 3 years worth of compounding interest on 3 years worth of payments. So I think that'll make up for whatever losses I take in not waiting until 65.
And additionally, since they changed the law last year under the Biden administration, you don't get penalized because you're a public servant or worker. So it's actually really advantageous now. I mean, I know a lot of people that got huge checks. You know, I know people that got $5, $6, $7, $15,000 checks. Even people that were told years ago they couldn't get any Social Security that now are getting, you know, $1,600 a month and things like that. So, I mean, it's actually turned out to be a beneficial thing.
Yeah, and so that's one of the good things about the big beautiful bill there. What I would like to see happen though is to have an actual knockdown budget, a budget that's written down there that goes by the Constitution, that goes by the laws, and that doesn't have any deficit spending at all in it. Like, you make an estimate of what your taxes are going to be, and you say that's all we're going to spend. And if you spend more than your taxes that actually come in, then you got to deduct that from next year, and have less. But now we're on this deficit spending trend to the point that we got like the Congress allowed $31.4 trillion in deficit spending. $1 trillion. That's the deficit, the debt cap. They can change that anytime, but it takes Congress to change it. And but they're just like, I don't know, they're like junkies. They get that little taste of credit and they keep running with it. Like, we got a new idea that's going to be great for the nation and it'll take 10 years to pay off. But you know what? We'll buy it now and in 10 years it'll reflect back, but it never works out. And then we've paid for that. And it's you know how you buy something and then you never use it and you're like, wow, what a waste of money.
You do, yeah.
If you bought it, it's like you go into one of these big box stores. I don't want to mention anything by name, and they have everything you want and nothing you need. I think that's what the government does is they budget for everything they want, but they really don't budget for everything they need. They go, oh, it's a lot of pork out there. So one of the things that I learned that scared me, because I hate learning things that scare me. It really doesn't scare me. So government bonds, right? And I always thought, like, hey, a government bond is issued and pays a certain percentage, and it's tax-free when you cash it in, and it's a good way to protect.
It's not federally tax-free. It's state. In our state, it's state tax-free. But
I thought the federal bonds. I'm talking about federal government bonds.
Yeah, like savings bonds.
You got to pay taxes on those to the feds.
Yes.
That's kind of weird. Then why would you even invest? There's better investments out there.
Well, they're not federally tax-free. In Illinois, they're state tax-free, but not federally tax-free.
Yeah. See, okay, so that's something else I didn't know.
There's another thing, though. There's federal tax-exempt bonds. They're municipal bonds. Those are federally tax-exempt.
That's the ones I'm talking about, the double E bonds.
Okay, so you're talking about municipal bonds then?
No, I'm not. I'm talking about municipal bonds. I know, I'm talking about the federal government now because it has to do with the BBA, or what we formerly called the BBB, the Big Beautiful Bill. Yeah. And when you talk about deficit, in order to get that money, the deficit money, it's like everyone has a credit card and you have a credit card limit. Some people really have unlimited credit, and some people have limits that they can't cover. The only reason the government has such a high deficit, or what I would call credit card debt, because that's what the deficit is for the U.S. government. It's credit card debt. It's not the same interest as credit card interest, but it's still debt. And their limit is extremely higher than anyone else. You know, imagine if you only earned $75,000 a year and you had $150,000 in credit card debt. You know, you're just written off. You're slave labor now. But when they issue these bonds, all right, so when the government issues bonds, they put them out for bid. There's no set interest rate. So if I want to issue, let's just keep it in solid numbers here, 1,000 double E bonds, all right? And they're at $10,000 each, right? So or double E's are $1,000 each. Anyways.
No, they could be 25, 50, 75, 100. I think the maximum goes up to 10,000 because there's a limit on double E and Series I bonds. There's a limit of how much you could buy per year.
All right, so the double E, let's say a $10,000 bond, and I put 1,000 of them out there, right, for bid. And the bid, right, the auction, it's said the auction, because there's so many of them out there, right, that the bids tend to get higher, all right? And so they go up for auction because there's only 1,000 of them, and the auction price ends up being $9,950, right? So it's a 5% interest rate on a year, right? So that's how the interest rate's set. Now, when there's not that many bonds out there, all right, to bid, the bids don't go as high. So now, you know, you can have it down to like $800. Now it's 20% interest on those things. So to keep the interest rates low, you know, there's a lot of bonds out there. And now banks, this was another thing I was talking about and really got me kind of angry, is that like a lot of these smaller banks back in the old days, remember Tallman Home?
Yes.
They owned like the entire south side of Chicago.
Yeah, their money was like in your money's in Fred's house, Fred's money's in Joe's house.
Yeah, it's a wonderful life thing.
Right.
It's a wonderful life thing. But now, what these bankers were doing, quote bankers, all right, is they were taking everyone's money and rather reinvest it into real estate and everything. They were simply buying these government bonds. And the government bonds paid the set rate of interest. Well, if the government bond's paying 7.5% interest and you're giving everyone 1% interest, you're making 6.5% interest. And you did nothing but buy these bonds. You did nothing. All right? But you buy the bonds and you combine everyone's money, you pay them out the interest, and then you provide the services of electronic banking and everything else. And you don't really have to invest well or make good fiduciary decisions.
Sound decisions, yeah.
Sound decisions. So these guys they're not really financial geniuses. They just had everyone's money. They invested it one way, and now they're living the payouts. But what happened to those guys is all of a sudden a bunch more bonds were issued out, a lot more, and the more bonds were issued out that were paying a higher interest rate, and their bonds became nearly worthless because they couldn't resell them and was looking at what they had, what they had to hold on to these things till maturity, right? And now they got all their money invested in 5% when the next bank over has invested in 7.5%. And it goes like that, and then these banks either get bought up or they collapse. But no one's really reinvesting in the United States and like per people's houses or people's businesses. Now you got to jump through hoops to get all these things done, right? Because they want you to prove that you're absolutely not going to default on this stuff. It's gotten worse. I know when I had to refinance, never missed a mortgage payment or whatever, not once, right? And they wanted me to have mortgage insurance. And I'm like, hold on a second. I've never missed a mortgage payment in like 20 years. What are you telling me? Well, you know, that's the way it is. I'm like, okay, I'll go with someone else. But what gets me there is that it's in the bank's best interest to keep a lot of bonds out there. It's in these bankers' best interest to have these government securities, a lot of them out there, because that means that the next bankers come in are not going to buy at a higher rate, at a higher interest rate, and put them out of business. So if in the future, all of a sudden, the government doesn't have to issue as many of these bonds, all right, then the interest rates go up and the older banks are lost. So the people that currently have the money will fight against this, which is counterproductive to me, because I think that there should be no bonds issued out. You go to, and let's talk in layman's terms, and I'm just a layman, so that's all the terms I could talk in. I balance my checkbook. I balance my income coming in, and I see what I have going out, all right? All right, so I got to pay for certain things: electricity, the mortgage, insurance, water, utilities. I write those all off. Those are all mandatory pays, right? And then after I do all my mandatory payments, whatever I have left is discretionary funds, right? So I could do whatever I want with that. So I divide it up into what my discretionary budget is. But I can't say, listen, I really want this and that, and I keep building up my credit. I keep throwing it on credit, you know, kicking it down the street with no anticipation of any more money coming in. So now I'm just buying on credit, and then I start paying interest. And all of a sudden, my interest is causing my discretionary funds to decrease. I mean, I bought all this junk or whatever, which hasn't made any money for me. There's some times where you have a capital investment, right? So you want
Right.
if I wanted to go into the, well, I'm an author and I wrote some books, right? But the books didn't cost me any money. I just typed them out on the computer, already had the computer. Computer was a small capital investment, all right? Typed out the books and then went to Amazon, Kindle, self-published them, and I've been self-promoting them. I haven't paid anyone any money for. You can kind of see the proofreading's a little. It's a little. There's one fat finger in like 10,000 or something. It's not too bad, but I can clean that up if I hired professional proofreaders, you know, and got a guarantee. But that would be a capital investment. So I could go to Kindle and give them some money to advertise within Kindle and Amazon. But if I don't get that money back in sales, right, then it's just money, you know, that's credit money. So I have to take that from my discretionary funds and just write it off. But the government doesn't do that. They're constantly spending more than they have, kicking the can down the road. And as the interest payments go up and up, that's reducing the discretionary spending that we have. But they don't want to reduce their discretionary spending. They want to continue to spend at yesterday's rates. And so what do you think would be the effects of a balanced budget amendment?
Well, I think it would be very good in that we would know what we were spending and we would get a handle on it, and we could potentially have a future of paying off our debt and yet making the proper investments. But what's interesting is, I don't know if you realize this, but you know, at the start of this, you have kind of encapsulated what's called the carry trade. Are you familiar with that?
No.
Okay. And this is causing problems internationally because historically, the Japanese yen has been a significant strategy for investments because it was very low. So a lot of countries and businesses used to borrow money in Japanese yen, which offered traditionally low rates. Then they would use that to buy currencies or stocks or bonds in countries with higher interest rates, like the US dollar, the Mexican peso, or the New Zealand dollar. And then the difference between the low interest paid on the yen and the money they earned on the other currencies was their profit. But recently, with the global slowdown, the Japanese yen has become unpredictable, and this no longer is an investment strategy. So what they were doing, the international bond market was counting on, like what you were saying, the same thing that the local bankers were doing by locking the money into that. And then when it fluctuated, it destabilized investments and currency around the world. So the thing, like you're saying, is it's important to get a handle on your monetary system. And then, like if we did have a balanced budget and we knew what the mandatory outflow is, we could then do something with the surplus, or know that we didn't need as much, and then maybe cause reductions in taxes to the citizens, even short-term ones, which would result in increased investment in the country, or increased savings, or increased profitability. And it could take the pressure off of certain markets, like the housing market or things like that, if they knew, or at least had a rough idea, how much surplus would be there.
Yeah, and I think anytime we get a surplus, until such point as we pay off the national debt, that's where it should go. However, you're going to have a lot of pushback on that because, like you said, a lot of countries and some so-called corporations, investment firms, were currency speculating. We all know what Christ did to the currency speculators. Right.
Right.
Anyways, they're currency speculating, and a lot of these third world countries invest in U.S. bonds. And China is strongly invested in the U.S. bonds because it's a guaranteed interest rate, and we're not going to default. And then they go and they speculate on higher interest rates in third world countries that may or may not default, but they're hoping to make up anything they might lose. And they're not really earning their keep or earning their improvements. They're merely speculating on it on the backs of someone else. And right now, it's everyone's speculating on the backs of the U.S. production, of the U.S. workers, and our GNP, gross national product. All right, so we're going to go to commercial. If anyone's got a problem with this, call in. We'll discuss it. But you got to be polite. We don't accept politics, and we don't accept impoliteness. This is the Chief Carter Republic Radio Show with your co-hosts Mike Tooman and Paul Burvitt every Saturday noon to 1, and we're filling in a little dead air time until 2 also. We're at the Fox River Valley Media Network, WRMN1410.com. You can call us in on 847-931-1410, or you can text us 505-926-1410, or hit us up on the Facebook Live channel, on the YouTube Live channel in the chat. And I know we got Jeff out there from Golden HO World. So let me see what he said. He says, "Hi, everyone. Just like the people who put into the bit spins, nope, nobody knows who controls it. Yeah. Soon we will be on plastic money. No more cash will pass hands. And I don't really trust anyone with my hard-earned money. Seems like if you make more money and had leftover funds, you need to give it to someone else, like homeless organization. Take care of." All right, so Jeff, on that one, Jeff, there's always going to be some criminal masterminds out there that demand hard currency. Well, by hard currency, even paper money. All right, it's so much easier to hide because you don't have an electronic channel. You don't have an electronic transfer there. So there's always that hard currency that banks keep in reserve also. And
there's always going to be a need for gold pressed latinum.
Yeah, yes. I think cash in hand, cards, everything else. Black markets won't be able to take cards. Illegal operations until you legalize heroin. You know, they're not going to be taking cards exactly for that. There's other ways to launder that money, though. But thanks for listening in, Jeff, and we'll try to cover a little more of that. So what I got to there is, as we pay, as if and when we pay off the national debt or pay it down, that strengthens the U.S. dollar. It also puts less of the it puts out less of our bonds, which means that they become either more valuable, but the interest rates go down because they're bidding on them higher. So if you want to buy one of our bonds, because there's less of them out there, the bids are higher for that. And so the interest rates go down. If you have more of them out there, there's plenty of them around, so the bids are lower on that and the interest rates go up. So it's better for us to start reducing the amount of bonds to keep this interest rates coming down that we have to pay out on the future of it. But the thing is, it's locked in already. The idea is that at some time, we're going to have to stop, just absolutely stop taking credit, using credit. We're going to have to pay that down a little bit and live on what we're used to. Countries like the most recent one, Argentina, right? Argentina had to go into a massive austerity program and reduce their government spending to reduce inflation because it was out of control. I was down in Argentina way back in the late 80s, and you would carry around with just loads of money to pay for everything, loads of paper money. The U.S. dollar was still, king, and the black market rate over what you would get off the government was outstanding. So the U.S. dollar was strong, so you could vacation overseas and have a great time because they wanted that money because they wanted to hold on to that because their own money, the Argentinian money, lost value so quickly there was no reason to hold on to it. And that affects the Argentinian government, but it's one thing after another. Now, last show we talked a little bit about artificial intelligence. And what you hear in the news media and see out there with this big, beautiful bill is everyone has found something that they don't like about it. This is going to affect this, and they've done what I tend to do on things. I tend to overthink things and look for the worst. I'm like, what's the worst that could happen? Then I try to prepare for the worst that could happen. But that's really a bad way of going around life because that's the chief thing in anxiety. I'm not a psychologist or anything, but I know what affects me. So I look for the worst thing that could happen. I prepare for that. Because if the regular thing happens or best thing happens, you really don't have to prepare for that. It's good, right? You're preparing for the worst thing to happen. But what you see out there is this is the worst part of the big, beautiful bill. This is the worst part. This is going to kick poor people off this. Poor people are going to suffer for this and everything. And they're screaming bloody, but they don't bring the good things out about it, like cutting Social Security on the majority of people, all right? The majority of people.
Taxes.
All right,
taxes.
Cutting taxes on the majority of people and everything. You never hear that this is great for the majority here. What no one's used is AI to say, okay, it's always like, do we cut taxes on the lower income range, or do we cut taxes on the higher income range, or do we cut taxes altogether? And how would that reflect in the economy? Sometimes you cut the taxes and you collect more taxes for some reason because all of a sudden people have reinvested in the economy, more people have jobs. If more people have jobs, more people are paying income taxes. If the rich people are holding on to the money, or the corporations are holding on to the money, or the money speculators are holding on to money because the economy is kind of bad and they're just holding on to that, it's not getting reinvested in the economy, and then more people are losing jobs. So less people are working, less people are paying taxes, but there's more benefits being paid out so people don't starve and everything. So where is the perfect number? We've been dealing with income taxes for over 112 years now. 112 years. So all these geniuses and all these economists, no one has come out and said, listen, this is the magic number. This is the magic formula. This is how you got to have the percentage of taxes versus everything else. And then we just stick to that formula and everything's great, right? All right, so we got a caller.
Welcome.
Who's out there?
Yeah, hi, Mike. It's Larry. How you doing?
Larry, how you doing?
Good.
Hey, Larry.
And Paul, how you doing?
Good.
Yeah.
You got to realize is that the media is basically anti-Trump. Okay.
Well, we're not being
matter what
political
he
about this. We're just saying the truth about what happens out there. I know a lot of people know they are, but we're not covering one side of the spectrum or another.
Well, I mean, do you ever hear anything positive about anything that Trump does? Anything positive?
Yeah, that's the thing, and that's a proven fact out there. All right, that's unfortunate because a lot of people, if you don't hear positive stuff, your morale drops, right? So when you hear that your chief executive officer, right? If all you hear, okay, let's go back to the military. If you're there and you got a commander and everyone, not in your command, in your company, but everyone in your battalion, saying, you got the worst commander, he's terrible, he's awful, this is bad, this is what he's done wrong, this is what he's done wrong, this is what he's done wrong. That makes for bottom morale within your company. Everyone's hearing bad about this guy, right? Like he's a toxic leader, so why don't they replace him or anything? But when you sit back and you step out and go, wait a second, we have the most ready company in the entire battalion. So are they jealous or are they hoping this guy fails? And if they're hoping this guy fails, who else is failing? The company and the battalion's going to fail because you can't run a battalion on 75% strength when you're eliminating a whole company. So yeah, that's a psyop, and that's unfortunate, and they should be looking at that and saying, that's not really fair to the country, because the flip side is when they get one of their beloved in there, and then they don't report on any of the stuff he's done wrong, and no one hears about that, and they say, oh, this is great, and so yeah, that's the truth of the matter. But here's the great thing about the internet world right now and the radio world, independent radio. Not so much television. It's very hard to find broadcast TV that's like that. But you have easily attainable alternate sources of information, right? Alternate viewpoints, right? You got the biggest podcast out there, and he called me. No, he didn't. All right, I'm just making this up now. He called me to try to get my airtime on. Joe Rogan, right? He wants to broadcast on live radio on WRMN. I wish, he's welcome on the show. If he called me up and said, "You want to come down to my show?" I'd buy my own ticket, go down there and talk to him.
Right.
We don't see eye to eye on everything, right? But he is an alternate source of information out there. You had my brother-in-law's former neighbor, Tucker Carlson, my ex-brother-in-law's former neighbor, Tucker Carlson. He was, he had his own opinion, and his opinion was against that of Fox News. And Fox News was probably the most right of center, right, news agency out there, and they got rid of him because he was right of them. But he is he's got his own powerful show on his own internet platform. With the internet out there, with podcasts and everything else, it's all getting out there. It's just a matter of, I'm a baby boomer, you're a baby boomer, Paul's a baby boomer. I'm at the tail end of the baby boomers, right?
Right.
A lot of these guys don't have the savvy to watch YouTube yet, right? They don't have the savvy to watch, to go onto the computer and to get to Rumble or to get to Gab or to get to Parler or one of these alternate things. I mean, they could barely do Facebook. We know which way Facebook leans. They could barely do Twitter. Those are the big ones. We know which way they lean. So they can turn on their television, and a lot of them still don't even have cable TV. But even if they did have cable TV, they would be hard-pressed to find a true, alternate channel out there. So they're just like, boop, there's ABC, there's NBC. So as the world gets a little older and more tech savvy, and people are sick of what broadcast is putting out to them, they've been getting their stuff on the internet. As you have alternate sources other than Twitter or Facebook, which they're worth what you do with them, right? And people are getting their own thing. It's just going to take some time. It's just going to take some time. Now we have AI. The trouble with AI is that it's whatever someone programs. It's not really artificial intelligence. It's someone's opinion typed in 1,000 times. It's someone's logarithm. Right. It's an algorithm written by a programmer that says if someone asks this, go out there, look for their 75% solution, and then parrot that as the truth. Sometimes the 75% solution is not the truth. It's as far from the truth as you could get.
Well, I want to offer an example of what people get from the media. For instance, the current war between the Palestinians and Israel, Palestinian terrorists in Israel. Almost half the Democrats now take the side of the Palestinians.
Well, we're getting a little political there. I don't want to jump into that. I could jump into that, but I think the war between Israel and Palestine has zero effect on the United States.
Well, what I'm getting at is that people watch this on the news and then decide, I'm going to get involved in this. I'm going to now go out there and protest, okay? But it's very selective. If you're worried, and if it's getting political, let me know. If you're worried about Muslims getting killed, over 1 million Muslims have been killed in rioting in Yemen since 1962. In fact, Egypt lost more troops in Yemen trying to quell the riots than they lost against Israel, 3 wars against Israel.
Well, probably the Saudis, because Egypt doesn't border Yemen.
Well, I mean, they sent the troops. Nasser sent the troops there.
Oh, he sent peacekeepers.
Well, ironically, when the 67 war broke out, people were wondering why you have all your troops in Yemen and you're going to fight Israel. Makes no sense. And also, over 1 million Palestinians have also been, 1 million people were killed in Syria. You don't hear nothing about that since 2014.
It doesn't fill their narrative.
Pardon me?
You don't hear about the Ukrainians. You don't hear about the Ukrainians using massed artillery against their own ethnically Russian citizens, civilian citizens. You don't hear that either. But the show here, we are talking about how this affects the security of the United States. I'm not a world opinion guy out there with the world, right?
All right.
I'm in the United States, and I'm in the center of the United. Well, not the exact center, but I'm in Chicago, right? I'm in the heartland.
Yeah.
If they invade, they'd have to invade from Canada by sea to have any chance of affecting me in Chicago. And if it went nuke, we're in Chicago, I'm close to O'Hare, kaboom, I'm vapor. What can I do about it? All right. So my concerns are more with the United States. With the United States having protests here, disrupting when it causes disruption of our peace in the United States, when it causes a disruption of our productivity, of our transportation, of the public peace. You're disturbing the public peace, right?
Right.
Now, there's proper ways to protest, a peaceful protest, right?
Right.
And then there's a disturbance of the peace, and having a psychological action, which all riots are psychological actions, having a riot to get the press there, all right, the press there to give you the international soapbox you want, all right? Yes. Right. So if the press says, right, well, this is a disturbance of the public peace, All right, it's causing a riot. We are not going to give them that soapbox. If the press ceased to give them the soapbox, guess what? They wouldn't do it. Because without the soapbox, no one notices. A 2-year-old holding a fit in the store because he won't get a bar of candy. People see that all the time. They don't notice. No one gives them a soapbox. No one says, hey, let's get the news out here to interview this 2-year-old as why his mom won't buy him candy. It doesn't happen, so you don't see it.
I'll even take it a step further, because I live in an area where there's a lot of, demonstrations and parades and stuff like that. 2 things. If these people are so concerned about it, go there, pick up arms, stand up for your cause, but they won't do it because they're cowards, okay? The other thing is, if it was so great over there, why did you leave? Go back. They need you. Remember that.
That's true. Syria's free now. And we have all these people here that said they were afraid of Assad. Well, Assad's no longer there. Get on the boat. Off you go. Nothing against Syrians. All right. I have nothing against anyone in the world. All right. What I have a problem with is when their so-called leaders have a problem with me.
No,
as a U.S. citizen, all right? As the United States, I've never done, okay, so I was in Afghanistan a couple times. I was in Haiti. I was in Bosnia. I was all over the world. But with my U.S. government as part of the military, I was defending our national interests. All right? The show here is going to be based more on national interest. Where are our national interests? What's happening in the world with the press, all right? It makes me sad. I don't like being made sad. Not that I'm going to live in a bubble and everything, but I would be happy living in, before World War I, wasn't Wilson. Woodrow Wilson was elected on the fact that he was going to be a isolationist.
Right.
That was his 1916. His campaign slogan was, "He kept us out of war." And then, with 1 month after he was inaugurated, April 7th, I believe, or something like that,
they used to inaugurate him in March.
Yeah, right. I think a month after he was inaugurated, 1917, he declared war on Germany. Because Germany said, we're unrestricted warfare. We're not going to be neutral towards anybody. You're in the area, we're going to sink you.
Okay, so he's an isolationist, and he still takes us into World War I, right? Now, here's going back to that, you want to talk about economics. Why, when the last international war, well, not because we had the Mexican-American War, but we fought the British in 1812.
That's right.
We fought them for independence in 1776. Yay, yesterday. Yes, it's July 4th. We declare independence. Then we fought them until like 81? Yeah.
Right.
All right.
So Yorktown.
So then we have the Mexican-American War. We have the Spanish-American War. When did we ever have the German-American War? Well, we didn't. So why?
Yeah.
All right. So why, when we were with the British, we fought the French, right? When we were down, we fought the French in kind of Mexico in a way. And later on, right, World War I's there, and we go to war on the side of the British. And the reason is because we couldn't trade with the Germans. We had no more trade. Because the British had them blockaded. Much like the British tried to blockade us, right? But the French came in, and we blockaded the South during the Civil War, which the British backed the South. So why do we go to war on the side of the British? People go, because we speak the same language. Really? All right. Well, we could have went to war on the side of the Germans and taken the British from both sides. However, right, we couldn't trade with the Germans. There was no trade. There's no way for us to get weapons over there, to sell them weapons, and to be able to get the money back after the war. With the British, we could do that. So any excuse. The Lusitania, boom, goes down. Boom, we're at war with the Germans.
I thought we helped the British because of the Beatles
Zimmerman
and
letter?
the Bee Gees.
The what?
No, because of the Beatles and the Bee Gees. Those were our only two allies.
Makes sense. Hey, everybody, I just want to have a shout out for Mike and Paul. This is a mandatory thing. I think any veteran or interested citizen or anybody who cares about anything should be listening to these guys every Saturday, 12 o'clock. That's my plug. You guys are the best. Love you both. Thanks again.
Thanks, Larry.
And anyone that wants to call in with the same opinion, Larry's a great guy, and Larry's back in the day. Larry was my first mentor in the Army that had a huge impact on me and made me who I am today. So are we ready to go to a commercial again?
Not yet.
Not yet. So
2 more minutes.
2 more minutes. So again, if we're not ready to go to war on one side or the other for U.S. interests and U.S. interests only, that's it. The things that have been messed up in this world, we should really think hard about how we go to war. And when we do something, it shouldn't be long involved in nation building. We should be the most powerful country on earth. We should have the most powerful military, the most awe-inspiring, the most lethal military in the world. We should absolutely have that. We deserve it. And then no one will mess with us. And when we say something that we don't like, it better stop. So that's my opinion on that. To throw our forces in somewhere to say, oh, we're going to keep peace over here. No, let the people keep their own peace. There's peacekeeper in Bosnia. That didn't work out well. Peacekeeper in Haiti. Well, we'll only be there 90 days, 4.5 years later. It's like they still, go and do what you got to do and leave. As far as how, that's another, I didn't even look it up. If we cut off all foreign aid, how many billions of dollars would that be out of our budget because that's purely discretionary spending.
We should be peacekeepers and peace emulators and not occupiers.
Yes. All right. When we come back, the second half of the Chief Guard of the Republic show. The Republic Radio Show with your co-hosts Paul Burvitt and Mike Tuman. Every Saturday, noon to 1 officially, but sometimes noon to 2 when we're filling in that blank hour before the White Sox. I don't know what we're going to do after the White Sox stop playing. Hopefully they have a big run and they go into the playoffs, and then they play in the World Series. I should bet some money on that. I bet you the odds are real long. But I've always been good for long
odds. The Cubs in the World Series.
Oh, that'd be awesome. Oh my God, we don't have enough police.
But the best thing is we be a winner either way.
We're a winner anyway, either way.
Yeah. Right.
We got some great sports teams out there. As our guys in the morning will tell you, guys on Saturday morning, they're all good. And so you call in 847-931-1410 like Larry and Cleveland Dennis called in, or you could hit us up on the Facebook chat like Jeff Trainsworld HO, No Gauge, N-O Gauge, and Brendan. Brendan's one of our loyal listeners. Glad to hear from Brendan. So Dennis brought up the bees, right? And I was lucky enough as a veteran, I don't know if it's still there, but the University of Michigan has a adult education program for veterans, for bees, beekeeping. And I took it and I got certified, so I learned a lot of bees. And for the last 3 years, I've had some hives. First year, they swarmed before the winter. And last year, I didn't treat them properly for the varroa mites. And they died off over the winter. But this year, I'm doing a little better job. So I know a little bit about bees. And yes, if the queen isn't being productive for some reason, they will kill the queen. The worker bees will kill their mother. They'll kill her. And then they will start take one of the larvae, they will feed it royal jelly, and they will grow it to be a queen. Sometimes they grow multiple queen cells because the girls don't talk to each other. Maybe there'll be multiple queen cells. But the first queen that hatches, if there's other queens still in the hive, haven't hatched yet, she'll go and kill them. And if there's multiple queens in the hive, then they'll go and fight it out for supremacy. So there was a movie recently released, and not too recently, but it's called Beekeeper, right? And I love it because CIA associated assassins. I'm like, and they got these high-speed guys that were trained in all this stuff, and they're like high-speed assassins, and they could do all this stuff, and they're real patriots and everything, and they're more about the country than they are the company. And so, and the thing is called the Beekeeper, and he's like, well, sometimes the queen needs to be replaced, and they're talking about a female president, all right? And I'm like, it was absurd to me because I had been in the world. It would be nice if the government, there were so many patriots, these highly trained, not deep state, but black ops, wet work guys that are just so hidden under certain levels, so many levels of bureaucracy. Everyone needs to be read on and read on and read on and read on, and they're way above top secret. And they're just, only a few people know about them, that were able to go in there and say, I don't think you're following the Constitution exactly, and put a bullet to end, and I'm not going to make sure that they weren't in the service of the country anymore. It would be nice but I think Hollywood is trying to make people believe that to keep people from demanding the change that's needed. Oh, don't worry about it. One of these fake superheroes is going to come and fix everything for you. You've seen it a lot in the movies. If it exists in the movies, it's got to be true, right, Paul? If it's in Hollywood, right. It's got to be true. It's on the internet. It's true.
The Green Lantern is coming right in to help us. I know that for sure.
Yeah. And unfortunately, there's a certain percentage of the public, probably above 51%, that believe this stuff. So they just sit there and take it. There are peaceful ways to go about it, and I'm not advocating for violent overthrow of anything because we still have peaceful methods completely available to us. They have to be protected. Poll watchers. Everyone says, oh, look at all this was messed up. Well, poll watchers, civil suits, and other parties have to be in there and keeping an eye, watchdogs on each other, not letting anyone cheat. And we all know the old saying in grammar school and high school, if you're not cheating, you're not trying. And it's only cheating if you get caught. Remember that. If you didn't get caught, then it must not have been cheating because there was no protective measures in there to keep you from doing it. Like in physics class in high school, we had hand calculators, but they weren't you needed a couple $100 to get a nice TI-30, right? That was a couple $100 back then. Now you get it for $9. You don't even need it. You got your cell phone, right? But all the functions were like built into it, and they had memory, and you could write, dirty words and numbers and put into memory, and you could write these functions down, the formulas. I'm not very good at memorization of stuff, but you could write the formulas down in the memory, but we didn't have that back then. Everything was pretty much times and division and plus and minus. So you would get you'd be able to do your times things a lot faster with the more complicated numbers. So you take a pencil and you would write on the back of your calculator all these formulas that you were supposed to memorize. And when you came in for the test, the first thing you do is flip over your calculator, write the formulas out on the paper, on any white spot on the paper you can find, write them out, and then lick your fingers and erase the back of your calculator. Well, one of the geniuses didn't like doing that, so he decided to engrave his calculator with the formulas. And the teacher comes up and picks up his calculator to do something and looks at it and sees all the great formulas out there. And he goes, everyone turn in your calculators. I'm like, oh, great. You ruin it for everyone. But you see, if you're allowed to do it, is it cheating? You know, if there's no protection against it, is it cheating? If there's a warrant officer school, and I'm telling war stories here. So one of the things was that you only had 7 minutes in the morning to get from your bed into your PT clothes, go brush your teeth, and go down and be in formation. It was 7 minutes. On Thursdays, that was linen exchange day. So you would have to stockade your bunk in that 7 minutes, which is folding your sheets, your pillowcase, and your blankets a certain way. Actually, very specific measurements, and that would all eat time. And you weren't allowed to get out of your bunk until 5:30 in the morning. Right? You weren't allowed to get out. You had to be undercover, under whatever. So I'm sitting there, and I'm like, you're up at 5:15, and you're just sitting there waiting to take a leak, And I'm saying, oh, I ain't got nothing to do. So I take my blankets off, I take my pillowcase off my pillow, I'm laying in the bunk, but I still have a sheet over me, and I've got the blankets all done, and they come into the room, right at 5:30. One of the TAC guys comes in and goes, you're cheating, which was the worst thing you could do in warrant officer school. You could do anything else, you get caught cheating, they're gonna kick you out of the class, right? They're gonna kick you out, which is really, that's bad. You're gonna get bad mark, your whole military career is fried by that point. Right? But they have you in such anxiety that you want to get this stuff done. So I end up standing on the carpet in front of these guys, and they go, well, we want you to write a 250-word paper on why loopholes are bad. Because apparently they had asked, right? And technically I was still undercover, and their book said I had to be undercover. It didn't say how many or what. So I found the loophole. We got another caller online. Who's calling, please?
Not another.
Oh, it's Dennis. Dennis, you're back.
Caller. It's this same caller. Loopholes. I love that discussion.
Yeah.
You know what? This is the country full of lawyers, and you know what their middle name should be? Loophole. But the main reason I was going to call, you were talking about the new bill. Me and my 35 assistants haven't read it yet. But I want to know if you could say, what about Medicaid? What are they going to do with that? What are they talking about there that's in the new bill?
They're putting in a work requirement.
Oh, work? Who? For the people that are on Medicaid?
Well, there's jobs you could do. There's a lot of people out there that all they do is call my cell phone 7 and 24, asking me if I want an auto coverage, and they're being paid by someone. I'm sure you don't need to be a 6'4", 250-pound, rough-built guy that could swing a pickaxe to do that job. All right, so it's not just a work requirement; it's an education requirement. So either you're going to work or you're trying to educate yourself, and it's something like 20 hours a month that they require. I'm going to open up that school for educating. Give them some soulful logic. I'll hire you. Well, some of these people, they have a thing. The number one, for people on Pell Grants going to the Chicago junior colleges, you know what their number one course of study was? They're getting federal grants to go to the junior college. So they're basically, the federal government is paying for their tuition and giving them a stipend to live off of while they're going to junior college. You know what the number one course of study was for them?
Yeah, it was diversity stuff.
No, GED.
Oh.
They're studying. Okay, you're guaranteed in the state of Illinois to be educated unless you're in prison, and they're still going to educate you until you're 16 years old.
Yeah.
After that, they don't have to provide for you. All right, but they will up until you're 18 to try to get you that high school diploma, which it's public education. You don't have to pay for it. It's all available to you. But yet, at 18 years old, you weren't able to even get that. So now you get a federal grant to go back to school to get a GED. a GED. You're going to college to learn how to be a high school graduate. Which, okay,
I love this.
that's fine. But at least that's something, right? Something to improve yourself. Something to make you a better option of employment.
Isn't it? It's part of keeping them out of trouble. You got to get, what do they say about the idle hands being a devil's workshop?
Well, that's one thing also. But the other thing is, right, okay, so what's so bad? Okay, the people that this is going to affect, all right? The people that Medicaid is going to affect to have a work requirement, and I'm sure there will be a waiver for these people, profoundly disabled. Now, I've done child abuse cases, and I've done even some adult, what they call elder abuse cases, or when they consider a person a child in the eyes of the law because they're so profoundly disabled, all right? Some of these kids are 100% non-responsive. They're non-responsive in any way. They will never improve. It's unfortunate. They're human beings. I'm sure there's something trapped inside of them that they're trying to get out, but it can't get out to the rest of us. But the state is still paying to educate them.
I got paid to be educated by the state of Ohio. They gave me $80 a month, Bureau of Vocational Rehabilitation. It worked for me. First quarter, I got 3 A's and a B. I had to show it to somebody there. That's pretty good.
I know, that spells ob.
Ab?
Ab. That's what 3 A's and a B spells. Ob.
Yeah. Anyhow, the real reason or the first thing I wanted to call about was the Medicaid, but it's interesting that you're telling me that. But I got another comment. You talk about the frontier from years ago.
Yes.
In fact, it was my brother-in-law that I was playing the great bingo yesterday. Him and his family. He's got 3 kids, a bunch of great-grandkids of mine and all that. But they were out in Salt Lake City and in Colorado, down where they keep the prison, up on the rooftop, looking out, having a nice dinner and lunch and all that. But she said the people out there have no idea what goes on back here. I said, well, if they don't live here, they don't know.
It's flyover country.
Yeah, I like that term, but she said she's calling it the frontier. I used to live in Arizona when I was a kid. Saw the mountains. Seemed like a frontier to me then. This country is big.
It is.
They were overcrowded in populations, but that's only in the city because people can exist better in the city for the most part. But the frontier still lives.
The further you go out away from the city, the less the government and other people take care of your needs for you. So the further you go out, the more capable you have to be to take care of your own needs. Or you just raised in that area, and that's how you learn how to live. But yeah, the central government, a centralized government, and a centralized power structure, much like Washington, D.C., because most of the time, your congressmen and your senators are spending in Washington, D.C. They all have second homes out there and everything, and they all become Virginiaites, Marylandites, or D.C.ites. And they're more concentrated on what's good for the East Coast, all right, than what's good for the rest of the country. All right? It's very centralized. That happens with all forms of government. They will become very centralized. If you live in Moscow, you have more access to the seats of power than if you live in Vladivostok, because you're further away. All right.
Vladivostok. I love that place.
Yeah. And, okay, so what's your next point, Dennis?
STM. You were mentioning about different acronyms. STM, that's what I got, short-term memory. When you guys start this show, man, I get fired up on every direction, and I hope when I call, I keep it focused. My last comment, when they were talking about the Chinese may have overplayed on the national news about making the electric cars and all that. The Chinese somehow think they're great. I work with them, and I'm just making my personal comments that they're great salesmen, okay? The way they sell products here in the U.S. I deal with the importers. I get to the root of the issue or the problem when they're trying to sell them food carts that are not allowed here and other items if you don't have an EPA sticker, and they oversell it. And I said, the government, I tell them, I said, your government needs to stop this because you're overselling, okay? You got something that somebody wants, but it can't be imported in the U.S., and they know it. These are factories that know that they're making these products.
I found that out. I'm glad you brought that up. That's another thing. All right. Yeah. So there was a great deal on Facebook, and you get these Facebook ads and everything. I says, man, this is a great deal.
I've seen that madness.
It was for some multi-tool. I says, oh man, this is a great deal. It's on Facebook. Right. It must be legit, right? So I go and I order one. I go and I order one, and I'm like, it's not coming. And then I contact the credit card company. I says, I never got this. And my money's immediately refunded. In the meantime, if you sell 10,000 units at $50 each, that's $500,000. If you take that $500,000 and you put it in an interest-earning account for 3 months, you got a couple $1,000s, all right, maybe $10,000, $20,000, and then you refund that money. Hey, it's nothing out of you. You just made money on the interest, and the credit card company makes some money or whatever. But it works for them.
That's why they let them run free with that crap. Because there's no regulation.
Well, it's encouraged because they're going to be paying taxes on it in China. Just because they're a communist government doesn't mean these companies don't pay taxes. So any money that the corporation or the little business in China makes is going to be kicked up to the federal government, like the mob. They're going to kick that money up. So why is the federal government like fentanyl sales, all right? Whatever chemical company is making fentanyl, right? They're kicking profits up to their higher level, all right? So are they going to stop them from doing it when that's just a money printing machine for them? Even though it's illegal, it's immoral, it's unethical, right? They're not going to stop it because the money's coming up.
That's why they're waving that Mexican flag down at the Los Angeles demonstrations, protests, BS, because the cartel at the border or in Los Angeles, the cartel in Chicago, New York, everywhere else, they're waving the flag because they are against what's going on at the border because that cuts off their money stream.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Or it makes it more expensive.
They make more money doing that than selling any products. But the Chinese oversell so much that, I don't know, they think that they're salespeople. But for the most part, that product that's coming from there, it's in demand because it's cheaper.
Yes.
The product sells itself, and I deal with people that are just so different, very impersonal, so different than Americans.
Well, on an international level, they'll go out. All right, so we try to help. We're kind of doing nation building stuff. There's federal funding involved. There's military funding involved, and all this stuff. And we set up a military base, and we have funding for that, and we have the contractors there. But we're doing really nothing to improve the logistical supply lines to get to our base. Whereas we're expecting through our foreign aid, the host country to say, well, we need a railroad going closer to this military base from the port to get all the supplies up to the military, like in Afghanistan or through Pakistan from Karachi. All right. We give the foreign aid there. Now the Chinese come in and they'll start building a port. They'll start building a railroad. They will put a military base like right next to ours if they can. But then they'll overextend themselves, and they won't have the money to finish it. And they would have hired a bunch of local employees, and they ripped stuff up, and they put something there, and they said, "Oh well, this isn't going to work out," and they immediately drop the project, and they go somewhere else. All right, and they leave this devastation behind them. People are now out of jobs. The infrastructure is only half built. It's never going to get built again. It's just going to go back to nature. You know,
There's
and
even a disgruntled attitude with the locals. Yeah,
With
they
the
did
locals,
that in Western
but-
Africa.
they don't care. They don't care. They're like,
right.
yep.
Right.
They'll move on to the next
Right.
one. They'll move to Panama. They're doing this stuff in Panama. All right.
Yeah, that's going to be a big problem. That's going to be a big problem down there. I have a personal friend, business, 20 plus years. His brother was just resigned from the FMC. They had moved down to Panama, and they're seeing all this stuff firsthand. And that's going to be a flashpoint of some sort.
Yeah. Well, we put a stop to it.
Vying for, pardon?
We put a stop to it already.
Right.
That's been, when it made the threat of season, there was a threat, or not really a threat, statement of seizing the Panama Canal again, because we kept that. We talked about this on one of our previous shows. We kept in the treaty that Jimmy Carter had signed, right, that we reserved the right to use military force to ensure free passage of U.S. flag ships through the Panama Canal. And if the Chinese had gotten control of the Panama Canal, that would have interfered with our free passage. And the Chinese were getting special treatment through the Panama Canal, and the Panamanians were overcharging us, and we considered that a violation of our free passage, unlimited passage. So we're thanks, Cleveland Dennis. So we're almost done with the two. Paul, which star is that? Is that the state's attorney star? On your shirt?
No, this is actually a canine. It was a tribute shirt to Loki, a canine dog who died in an accident. And me and some other people, we bought shirts so that they could bury him and then get a replacement. It's out somewhere near Rockford.
Peace out to Loki.